Hot coffee wasn't supposed to ruin lives. It was supposed to be my savior in this disaster of a day. But yet, there I was, shirtless, scrubbing a stain like my life depended on it. And if you think it couldn't get worse, it does. Because the Damien Black chose that exact moment to walk into the restroom, that usual smirk on his face as his eyes scanned me from top to bottom. "Well, well, isn't this a surprise?" he said, his smirk getting wider. "Need a hand, Theo? Or maybe just an audience? Look, Damien, I am not in the mood, so just leave me alone." "Oh, someone's cranky. I was just offering help, kiddo," he said, his mocking tone still intact. "No thanks, I got it under control." That was all I managed to say. Ugh, why does it always happen? Every time Damien is around me, all my sarcasm goes out the window, and this is exactly what he loves. Picking at me, getting under my skin. This endless back and forth, this bickering. It's been this way since about a month after I joined the company and got to know Damien a little better. I can't believe I had a crush on him, but soon that and the possibility of anything ever happening between us went out the window. So this is our thing now. I'm sure Damien hates me, and, well, the feelings are mutual. "This look doesn't exactly scream control, but it does suit you, I think," he muttered, breaking my chain of thoughts. "I told you to leave me alone, or else," I snapped. "Oh, come on, kiddo. Are we throwing empty threats now?" he laughed. And that did it for me, because what I did right the next second finally wiped that teasing smirk right off his face. I just grabbed the nearest bottle of water and splashed it right across his chest. Childish, I know, but satisfactory? Hell yes. "Theo, what are you, 12? He shot back, the shock of the cold water clear on his face. "You're the one who called me a kiddo, so why not live up to it?" Damien didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced down at his soaked shirt, then back at me, and for a second, I almost thought he was going to explode. But then the corner of his mouth twitched, almost like he was holding back a laugh. "You're lucky you're cute, Theo," he said with a dark chuckle, "because this is far from over." And just like that, the unspoken tension was back in the air. It only got worse in the next few minutes as I regretted ever throwing that water at him, because now he was taking his shirt off, exposing those toned muscles I couldn't stop looking at. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to break the awkwardness. "Trying to dry my shirt, of course, no thanks to you. Or do you expect me to sit with a soaked shirt in this cold weather?" He chuckled, and my heart did that weird loop it always did when he laughed like that. Gosh, why did he have to be a jerk and so damn attractive at the same time? So, there we were. Two shirtless guys standing in the middle of the restroom when the doors swung open and entered Mr. Matthews, our boss. "Oh my god, are you two banging in here?" Mr. Matthews exclaimed as soon as he saw us, the shock visible on his face. "No!" both of us shouted in unison, practically tripping over our words as our faces turned red. We shot each other a brief, wide-eyed glance, both trying to act like this wasn't the most awkward moment of our lives. "Oh, just banging heads as usual then, okay?" Mr. Matthews said with a soft laugh and went on to do his business. In the meantime, both me and Damien rushed to get our shirts back on before the situation could get any more awkward. I was supposed to hate this guy, right? Then tell me why I can't stop thinking about his chiseled body. Later that day, the office was buzzing with the usual pre-Christmas chaos when the HR manager's voice suddenly cut through the noise. "All right, everyone, it's time for Secret Santa. You've got exactly 1 week before the Christmas party to figure out what to get your colleagues. So let's keep it fun and festive." I groaned inwardly, already regretting the entire concept. Everyone was always so weird about it, and I was definitely not in the mood for forced holiday cheer. "Now, everyone grab a chit and pick a name," the HR manager continued, clearly excited about the whole thing. I saw the rest of the office dive into the pile of slips with over-enthusiastic smiles. Damien, of course, was leaning against the wall, watching me with that infuriating smirk of his. I hadn't even realized how much I hated that smirk until recently, after the whole shirtless bathroom incident that I still couldn't get out of my head. "Hope you don't get me," Damien said, his voice low and teasing. "I'm a hard person to shop for. You'd probably end up buying me socks or something lame." I shot him a look. "You're the last person I'd want to buy for." Damien raised an eyebrow, clearly enjoying my discomfort. "We'll see about that," he said, his grin growing wider. I narrowed my eyes as I picked my chit. I unfolded it, already regretting the whole thing. Damien Black. I had to fight the urge to groan aloud. Of course I got his name. The universe was laughing at me, clearly. Damien was still there, unaware of his name on my chit, and how much I was dreading it. "So, who got stuck with you?" he asked, his voice dropping into that playful, teasing tone. I narrowed my eyes, but I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction. "None of your business, is it? You should focus more on whatever lousy gift you'd be getting for the poor person whose name you got," I muttered as I retreated back to my seat. I hated how he always succeeded in getting under my skin, and even more than that, I hated how I could still not stop thinking about his shirtless body. But most of all, I hated how I found myself wondering if my Secret Santa was going to be an insufferable jerk like Damien. 2 days later. I was the last one left in the office, and I could feel the hours dragging on. I had to finish this damn project by tonight. Deadline day had arrived, and I was still struggling to wrap up the final details, my eyes burning from the staring at the screen for too long. It was just me and the clock now. I was typing furiously when I heard those footsteps, slow, steady, and annoyingly familiar. "Still here?" Damien's voice was a soft contrast to the sharp typing sounds my keyboard made. "Yeah, not all of us have the luxury of leaving at 7, I said, trying to keep the edge out of my voice, but failing. "Some of us actually have deadlines to meet." There's a pause, and I could practically feel him smirking on the other side of the room. "Okay, Mr. Editor, but you're not thinking of staying all night, are you?" I shot a glance in his direction, irritated by the way he seemed to think this was some kind of joke. "I'll leave when it's done." "Good luck with that, kiddo," he said and left, leaving me a bit annoyed and alone. I hated this. With this pace, I might have to be here all night, and I was dreading it. 5 minutes later. I heard the footsteps again. I was surprised as Damien came back with a cup of coffee in his hand. "For the brain power," Damien said as he set the coffee down on my desk, almost too casually, like this wasn't the most out-of-character thing he'd ever done. I blinked, momentarily thrown off. You brought me coffee?" He shrugged, that same smirk playing on his lips. "I figured you could use it. You looked like you might implode from stress." I stared at the cup, then back at him. It was an unexpected gesture, the kind I didn't think I'd ever get from someone like Damien. A soft thanks was all I could mutter as my mind raced about how maybe, just maybe, Damien wasn't as big of a jerk as I thought. Careful not to spill it this time. Not that I'd mind that surprising sight again. Nope, definitely still a jerk. But was he trying to flirt with me right now? Before I could think more about it, he spoke again. "Goodbye, kiddo," he said, leaving me alone again, but this time with a cup of coffee and a whole lot of confusing emotions. Was Damien just playing with me as usual, or was there some meaning behind his words? And honestly, the butterflies in my stomach weren't helping much. A few days later. It had been a week of Damien's constant bickering and that stupid flirting that most probably meant nothing to him. And honestly, he was starting to get on my nerves. I was even more annoyed because tomorrow was the Christmas party, and I still hadn't decided what to get this insufferable jerk. I was already pretty annoyed at Damien for being clingy to me all week long, and the 1,000-page-long manuscript in front of me waiting to be worked on was just adding to the stress. And if things weren't bad enough already, Damien showed up at my desk. "What do you want, Damien?" "Oh, nothing much," he said casually. "Just thought I'd offer my expert feedback on your edits." I stopped reading as I glanced up to see him holding a printed copy of the pages I'd been agonizing over for the past week. "What are you talking about?" My confusion was clear in my voice. He leaned on my desk, waving the papers like a trophy. "This! I found it on the printer. Thought I'd take a look. You're welcome, by the way. Saved you a trip." "You read it?" My voice cracked as my blood boiled. "More like skim," he said, shrugging. "But, Theo, some of these edits? Brutal. Poor author's gonna need therapy." I snatched the pages from his hands, scanning them in horror. My edits, my notes, all scrawled over with this ridiculous comments in bright red ink. "What the hell, Damien?" I shot up from my chair. "This is my job! You can't just swoop in and vandalize my work like this!" I was honestly seething. Was this all a joke to him? Just a means to get on my nerves? I mean, all those comments and flirting were alright, but now he was messing with my work. "Oh, come on, I was just trying to help. Look, I even fixed your spelling in one part," he said, still in that casual tone, and if anything, it just made me more angry. Help? Fix my spelling? Oh, you mean correcting the typo I didn't even make? Do you even realize how unprofessional this is? Relax, kiddo, he said, his tone a bit more serious now. It's not like anyone will see it but you. What the hell is your problem, Damien? I was seconds away from exploding. Hey, chill, okay? I was just messing with you. I'll fix it for you, get another print of it, he said, the smirk long gone from his face. You know what? Just leave. But Theo, I told you to leave me and my work alone, Damien, I shouted. He barely just nodded before making his way to his own desk. I couldn't believe this guy. One minute he makes me feel like he genuinely cares about me, and the other minute I'm wondering how I still have not quit this job. Or worse, strangled Damien Black. Later that day, I was just halfway through the manuscript I was working on, still pissed at Damien for his crazy antics earlier, and my back sore from working non-stop for over 2 hours didn't help either, so I decided to take a walk. That's when I saw Damien with an old guy in the reception area. Even from a distance, I could sense that something was different. Damien. The way he stood there, without a smirk or that casual posture he carried. He seemed stiff, almost tense, standing there with the old man who was just curiously looking around the building. It was such an unfamiliar look on him that my curiosity got the better of me, and before I could think the better of it, I was walking over. Who's this? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral but failing to mask my lingering irritation. Damien turned to me, his jaw tightening for a moment. This is my dad, he said, his voice oddly subdued. He's just here to grab the key to my place. My parents are visiting for Christmas. His dad nodded towards me. I was just leaving. I don't want to interrupt Damien's work. I crossed my arms, the earlier anger bubbling up again. Interrupt? Hardly. It's not like Damien has anything important to do. He spends most of his days doodling. Anyway, perks of a graphic designer, I'd say. I'm sure the printer guy has a heavier workload. I cackled a bit. I mean, this was our thing, right? And after what Damien did this morning, he sort of deserved it. Damien's dad just shot him a look while saying, I see my son hasn't changed. Always a bit of a troublemaker, huh? He laughed a bit before finally turning to leave. I'll just leave. Nice meeting you. I expected Damien to fire back with one of his usual quips, but he didn't. Instead, his expression shifted, just for a second. A flicker of something I couldn't quite place. Hurt, maybe? No. It had to be my imagination. See you at home, Dad, Damien said quietly, his voice unusually restrained. Feeling the sudden weight of the moment, I muttered a quick goodbye and walked away. But even as I returned to my desk, I couldn't shake the look on Damien's face. It gnawed at me. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Just another round of our usual back and forth, wasn't it? The next day. The Christmas party was in full swing, laughter and chatter filling every corner of the office. Meanwhile, for me, things were a bit weird. It had been a whole day and Damien didn't even talk to me once. No banter, no flirting, nothing. It felt uneasy having him stand right there, not even acknowledging my presence. I hate to accept it, but I kinda missed his weird bickering, even though only a day had passed. Soon it was time to open the gifts, and I was actually surprised to find 2 neatly packed gifts kept on my desk. I was confused. How did I have 2 gifts? Bemused, yet excited, I opened the first present, a sleek set of headphones. Okay, not bad. But as soon as I opened the second gift, my heart skipped a beat. There, wrapped in the glorious paper, was a vintage edition of The Great Gatsby. I had read this book over 5 times, and for months, I had been pining for this vintage edition, but I just couldn't find it. It wasn't just a book. It was a dream I'd often mentioned in passing, one I never thought anyone noticed. But someone did not only notice it, they even went out of their way to get it for me. There was also a note in the book. Since you've been wanting this forever. I was honestly very touched by this gesture, thinking who in the office knew me so well. So, how did you like my gifts? The soft, flirty voice snapped me out of my thoughts as I turned to find Leah, one of my colleagues standing there. Oh my god, Leah, how did you know my favorite book? I asked her excitedly, only to be met with confusion clearly written on her face. Book? Did you not get those cool headphones I got you? I know you're into music, Leah said, flashing me one of her widest smiles. But how did I get this book then? I was still confused. Of course, that loser could only get you a lousy book. Drop him. Tell me, would you like to hang out with me sometime? She said. Her eyes seemed full of something I couldn't quite figure out. But wait, was she asking me out? Leah, I appreciate the effort, but you do know I am gay, right? As soon as the words made it out of my mouth, the dreamy look in Leah's eyes snapped right out of her face as she just mumbled something under her breath, the words too soft and too rushed for me to catch. And just like that, Leah left without any explanation, leaving me with the thoughts of who could possibly know me so well. I was adamant about wanting to know who got me this book, so I got it from my desk to go talk to Leah. But before I could do that, I saw Damien sitting on his desk looking at the gift I got him. It was a karaoke set, along with the note, "Maybe now your singing can improve." This was supposed to be a funny gift, sure to make Damien laugh, but with the way Damien was just sitting blankly at his desk, the joke didn't seem to stick, so I made my way to him, hoping I could ease out of the weird silence there was between us two since yesterday. Hoping for his usual smirk or a playful jab, I asked, "Did you like my gift?" His eyes barely flickered to mine before he looked back down at the karaoke set, his expression unreadable. "It's whatever," he muttered, his voice devoid of any warmth. The words landed with a sting, colder than I was prepared for. The usual flirtation, the teasing banter, it was gone, replaced by something that felt almost dismissive. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say, but when he didn't even bother to look up again, the awkward silence hung between us like a heavy fog. It stung more than it should have. With a tight nod, I turned away, walking back toward Leah, the silence between us echoing louder more than any words could. Had I unintentionally ruined something I didn't even know we had? When I reached to talk to Leah, I was surprised to find her talking with Tony, all smiles and a gift in her hand. Tony was flirting with her, and the two seemed to be hitting it off. I was a bit surprised. I mean, wasn't this girl just trying on me 10 minutes ago? Anyway, I focused on the task at hand, asking Leah if I could talk to her for a second. She was hesitant, but nodded. "Who were you talking about when I asked you about the book? I mean, you said something about the loser getting me a lousy book. Who was it?" She hesitated, glancing at Tony for a moment before looking back at me, her eyes shifting uncomfortably. Finally, she sighed and spoke up. "It was Damien." She shifted her weight, her voice softening. "I got your name in the gift exchange, but Damien came to me and asked if I'd exchange it for Tony's name. He said he was hoping to get you a better gift, something more personal. But, well, I refused to switch it. We kind of had a row about it. He wasn't too happy." I stared at her, speechless. Damien. Damien had gone to all this trouble? My mind was racing as I tried to process it. "So, you're saying Damien got me this book. But why?" Leah shrugged. "Maybe because he knew you well enough to pick something that would actually mean something to you, even if it's a lousy book." I froze, the realization sinking in like a weight in my chest. Damien had known the perfect gift. My perfect gift. But how? I had to talk to him, but as I turned towards his desk, I saw he was gone. He must have left while I was talking to Leah. But I couldn't let him leave before I talked to him, so I ran towards the parking lot. 5 minutes later. I spotted Damien leaning against his car in the far corner of the parking lot. The cold breeze cut through my jacket, but it didn't stop me from walking toward him, my heart pounding in my chest. He didn't look up when I approached, his back turned. I swallowed hard, taking a deep breath before I spoke. "Damien," I called out, my voice tight with frustration and curiosity. He didn't move. "How did you know that book was exactly what I needed?" For a long beat, he didn't respond. He just stared ahead. I repeated myself, pushing for an answer. The silence between us only made the tension in my chest tighten, thick and suffocating. Finally, Damien turned to face me, his expression unreadable. "It doesn't matter," he muttered, his voice low. "It's over now." I stared at him, a sharp edge of anger creeping into my tone. "No, Damien, it does matter. How did you know what I wanted? What the hell made you pick that book?" Damien's eyes flickered, something dark flashing behind them before he exhaled harshly. He pushed off from his car and took a few steps toward me, his face contorting into a mask of frustration. "You really want to know?" he snapped. "I'll tell you." His words hit harder than I expected. He took a breath, his fists clenching at his sides. "I knew because I was stupid enough to fall for someone who doesn't give a damn about anyone's feelings. Who thinks everything's a game." He leaned in, his voice growing louder, more cutting. But you didn't care. You never cared. I froze, my mind struggling to catch up with his words. What are you talking about? Damien's face twisted into something raw, something bitter. I thought maybe, for once, my dad might see me for who I really am. That the passion I put into my career might matter to him. Maybe, just maybe, he'd see me. But no, he scoffed, shaking his head. You came along, and you made sure I was nothing but a joke to him again. Gave him another reason to laugh at me. And now I'll be spending Christmas alone because my parents went back to their perfect little house to celebrate with my more successful brother. They don't care about me. His words were a slap to the face. I hadn't known any of this. It was just another one of our stupid jokes, wasn't it? Just some friendly banter. But for Damien, it had meant so much more. I felt my heart drop in my chest, the weight of my ignorance crushing me. I hadn't realized just how deep it went, how much he was really struggling. Damien, I didn't know. My voice cracked, but I pushed forward, trying to make him understand. I didn't know it meant so much. Damien let out a harsh laugh, but it wasn't one of amusement. Of course you didn't. You wouldn't, would you? You wouldn't know because you're too wrapped up in your own world to see anyone else's. I shook my head, a knot forming in my throat. But I thought you hated me. Damien's expression softened for just a second before hardening again. The only way you'd ever talk to me was when I teased you, when I annoyed you. That's how we interacted, right? So yeah, I kept doing it, just so you'd talk to me. But I'm an idiot for doing that for someone like you. A heavy silence settled between us. I opened my mouth to say something, anything to explain, to fix this mess. But Damien just shook his head. His eyes softened for a brief second, but then they hardened again, the distance between us clear as glass. Without another word, he turned and walked toward his car. I stood frozen, my chest tight, my mind spinning. I had messed up. Not just with the gift, not just with the banter, but with him. All this time, Damien loved me. All this time, both of us were just hiding our true feelings behind our facade of hate. And now it was too late. I had no idea how I was going to fix this, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about the gift anymore. It was about everything I had missed. Everything I had failed to see. And now, all I had left was the burning realization that I had ruined something I didn't even know I wanted. But now I was seeing clearly. I wanted Damien, and I wanted him bad, no matter what it took for me to fix this. A few days later. It was Christmas Eve, but nothing about my Christmas felt merry to me. It had been a few days since our office's early Christmas party, and since I realized how wrong I had broken the heart of the person who had been in love with me for God knows how long. But now I had ruined it all, because now Damien wasn't talking to me, not even to tease me. It's not like I did try to talk to him. I did. I've been trying every day since the day in the parking lot just to get him to talk to me, but he refuses to even acknowledge my presence. I guess that's how much I hurt him. But I couldn't lose him. This made me realize one thing. I couldn't move forward without fixing what I had ruined. And that's why, as crazy as it sounds, I'm on my way to fix it. Precisely speaking, I'm on my way to Damien's dad's place. I got the address from one of Damien's work friends who had been there with him to drop some stuff off. I'm going to talk to him. I know this might backfire, but I have to try. An hour later. The drive to Damien's father's place felt endless, but after an hour of doubt and second-guessing, I finally pulled into a quiet suburban street and stopped in front of a modest two-story house. It looked nothing like the home of someone who'd ever made Damien feel small. It was a place of comfort, a family. I knocked on the door, my pulse pounding in my throat. Damien's father opened up, recognizing me in an instant. "Oh, you work with Damien, right? Can I help you?" I cleared my throat, suddenly feeling more nervous than I had anticipated. "I need to talk to you about your son," I started, my words tumbling out in a rush. Damien is a damn talented graphic designer. You probably don't know this, but he's been heading his own team for months now, landing clients left and right. And every success he's had, it's because of his work, his talent, not because of me or anyone else. I paused, meeting his eyes, trying to find the right words. I was stupid enough to make the mistake of mocking him, of making fun of something I didn't understand, but you'd be stupid not to appreciate him. You should be proud of him. The silence that followed was suffocating. Damien's father didn't respond, his expression unreadable. I stood there waiting for something, but the quiet felt like a failure. I was about to turn away when he spoke, his voice soft, almost hesitant. "Can you give me a lift?" he asked, his tone suddenly warmer. "My car's at the garage. I need to see my son for Christmas." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We both knew this was a fragile moment, and maybe, just maybe, this was my last chance to make things right. Another hour later. The drive to Damien's house was heavy with silence, broken only by the occasional directions from his father. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I parked, watching Damien's father step out of the car. He walked up to the door and with a purposeful stride, though I could see the hesitation in his shoulders as he raised his hand to knock. A moment later, the door opened, and there was Damien, his face immediately guarded as he saw who it was. "Merry Christmas, my son," his father said, his voice quiet but steady. For a heartbeat, Damien didn't move, his expression caught between disbelief and something I couldn't name. Then, slowly, he stepped forward, and his father pulled him into a firm, heartfelt hug. Damien's eyes fluttered shut, his hand gripping his father's shoulder tightly, as though afraid it might be the last time. From my spot in the car, I watched the walls crumble from Damien's face, the vulnerability he rarely showed etched into every line. And then, as if sensing me, he looked up. As our eyes met, the regret in mine must have been clear. His stare softened, and for a second, the apology I couldn't speak hung in the air between us. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, swallowing the lump in my throat, and drove away, leaving Damien to his moment, hoping I had done at least one thing right. Later that night. It was late when a knock on my door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened the door, my heart skipped a beat. There he was, Damien, standing at my door with his hands inside his pockets, looking as attractive as ever. "Damien?" I breathed, barely believing he was here. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me with those intense eyes, the weight of everything unsaid hanging heavy between us. Then softly he said, "Thank you." I blinked, my throat tightening. "No, I don't deserve your thanks, but I do deserve a chance to apologize. Damien, I'm so sorry. I messed up. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't bother to," he interrupted, his voice sharp but not unkind. "You hurt me, Theo. More than you know." "I know," I whispered, stepping closer. "But you have to believe me. I never meant to. Jokes aside, Damien, I've always respected you. I've always cared for you. I just thought you hated me, so I continued with our banter." "Hate you?" He let out a soft, bitter laugh, shaking his head. "I could never hate you. That's the problem." The admission hit me like a punch to the chest, and before I could stop myself, I said, "If you forgive me, if you'll let me, I'll show you just how much you mean to me." For a moment, his gaze softened, the tension easing. "Of course I forgive you, but I am going to need some time." I nodded, about to say something before he cut me off, a smirk replacing the soft smile on his face. "Moreover, I'm not going out with a loser who'd apologize and ask me out in the same line. You need to try harder, kiddo." He let out a small laugh, and I knew things would be all right between us. "Okay, I promise I won't let you down," I said. Yeah. Now are we spending Christmas out on your porch, or would you like to invite me in?" And just like that, my Christmas didn't seem that bad, as Damien and I stayed up all night watching Christmas movies, laughing and teasing each other about things until we ended up falling asleep all snuggled up on the couch. I know things weren't perfect, but Damien was willing to give me a chance, and that was more than enough for now. 7 days later. Damien and I had become inseparable since Christmas Eve. We spent the days drinking hot cocoa on my porch, commenting on the extravagant decorations in the neighborhood. We traded sarcastic comments, laughter, and stories from our childhoods. With every moment, the bond we shared grew stronger, and somewhere between the teasing and the quiet moments we found together, something had shifted. We were no longer just colleagues for those frenemies from the past. We were way more than that, something deeper, something more real. We were starting to understand each other in ways we never had before. He had forgiven me, and in these few days, I knew I had to make it official. I couldn't keep hiding my feelings. Earlier this month, Damien had mentioned his dream proposal to another colleague during office lunch. He talks about how he never thought anyone would go to the lengths to understand him, to see how he liked the little things, the lavender, the quiet moments, the poetry. And I realized he wasn't talking about grand gestures. He wanted someone to see him, to truly see him. So I planned it carefully on New Year's Eve, just like I had heard him describe. That evening, as the clock ticked closer to midnight, I took Damien to a quiet park. I'd set up lavender-scented candles, their glow soft in the night. A hand-bound book of poems lay on the bench. It wasn't much, but just some thoughts I had written in these days. They were about us, about everything we went through, the banter, the hurt, and the healing, and how all through this, he was always the center of my world. Damien looked around, his eyes wide as he took in the scene. He turned to me, a question in his gaze. I stepped closer, holding the book in my hands, my voice barely a whisper as I said, "Damien, I see you. The real you. And I know that I've hurt you, but I'll spend every day trying to make it right. You mean more to me than I ever let on." "Theo, how did you know about this? My dream proposal?" he asked, still in awe of his surroundings. "I guess you're not the only one who paid attention," I chuckled. "Theo, before he could finish, I pulled him into a kiss. One that held all the words I hadn't said before. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was real. As the clock struck midnight, we pulled away, both of us breathless. "Happy New Year, Damien," I whispered, my hand cupping his face. "Will you let me show you every day how much you mean to me?" He smiled, his thumb gently brushing over my hand. "You already have, Theo." And as we kissed again, this time beneath the stars, the world around us faded away, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The next day, New Year's Day. We spent the first day of the year on a karaoke date, the living room filled with laughter and off-key singing. Damien was in the middle of belting out a classic when I couldn't help but ask, "So, who did you actually get for Secret Santa?" "Tony," Damien replied between breaths, grinning mischievously. I raised an eyebrow. The poor guy must be left without a single gift while I got two. Damien's grin only widened. "No, I got him something. Sent Leah to give it to him. Turns out they're dating now. I guess you could call me the matchmaker." I blinked, processing it. I burst into laughter, realizing how perfectly everything had fallen into place. So that's why they'd been so friendly lately. "You really are full of surprises, Damien." He shrugged, a playful glint in his eyes. "What can I say? I've got skills." And as we laughed together, I knew my new year couldn't have started on a better note. 2 days later. Back at the office after the holidays, everything felt lighter, like we were walking on air. Damien and I exchanged a smile before settling at our desks, the usual office buzz around us. Mr. Matthews appeared in the doorway, eyeing us with a grin. "So, are you two banging now?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Damien and I froze for a second, glancing at each other. There was no denying it. We both chuckled as Mr. Matthews gave us a teasing glance, shaking his head. "I knew it," he said before making his way to his office. I guess Mr. Matthews had some matchmaking skills of his own, since all of this banter between me and Damien started when he put us on the same team months ago. Well, I'm not complaining. Thanks to him, I now have a boyfriend who never fails to get on my nerves, but also makes me feel like the luckiest man alive, every single day. Our year just got better from there, as with each other's support, other aspects of our lives also became better. Damien taught me how to take things easy and not let work stress drive me crazy, while I supported him as he worked on healing his bond with his father. It wasn't easy, but we were taking it one step at a time, and I guess as long as we have each other, we can even conquer the world. But for now, conquering each other's hearts was more than enough. The end. What is your dream proposal? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.